Good evening, Cheese Room, and welcome to our Monday night reaction show. It's a challenging time to be a Spurs fan right now, and it's a challenging time for a panel of guests to come on and talk about the misery that is Spurs right now. In a week that Spurs' apparent number one target turned out to be, well, not a target at all. Mason mastering the art of 0xG, and a director of football hunt that's quieter than Arsenal Fan TV right now. Joining me to discuss everything Spurs, starting my top right, James. James, how are you? How's your week been? Student life treating you well?
Oh yeah, student life always treats me well. You know, it's the best thing on earth. Yeah, I mean, Spurs haven't brought me much joy, but it's been a lovely day actually. Went for a nice walk. Finished my newest vest, which was a labour of love. But yeah, it's been good. Thanks for having me on. Got a good show coming up for everyone.
Yeah, so. Should be good. Is that, you say that's a homemade vest? Is it you made that?
I didn't actually make the vest. I just put all of the band patches that are on it. So yeah, that took a while.
Nice. That will give you an A easy in textiles, I think, at school.
Hell yeah.
So good.
The wrong degree, didn't I?
Exactly, that's it. And then my bottom right continues to support Spurs home and away. I don't quite know why. Becky, how are you this week?
I said it last week. I said until I've got anything better to do, I'll carry on doing it. Yeah, it's only an hour and a half away, Villa. It's okay.
Yeah. I mean, it must be getting closer to having something better to do.
Yeah,
it must be cricket. Getting closer. Yeah, cricket. Yeah. Not long for that. And join us from over the pond, Jack. Jack, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well on a Monday. The only thing I'm a little dismayed about is I was told that the topic of the discussion was whether Arsenal's season this year was the best bottle job ever or the second best bottle job ever. I thought that was the topic we were going to spend an hour talking about. I'd rather do that.
I mean, I'll happily talk about that, and I think it's a good one to have. But it is funny. I did take joy in listening to Arsenal Fan TV again this week. The meltdown, but apparently they was never in the race, were they? So they can't bottle something you was never in the race for. Same as when Tottenham famously bottled the league when Leicester won. We never spent a day top of the league, but we bottled it. You can't make it up, can you? Arsenal.
No, you can't.
That's the one thing. At least they didn't win the league. Okay, so 34 of you listen already. Thank you for joining us. I know it's tough. We'll try and help you talk through some of those good big topics of the week. Anything you want us to particularly talk about, put a message in the group.
Did we lose Craig?
Well, don't ever enter into a staring competition with Craig. You will not win. Dare I say, he could even beat a neighborhood cat. So,
yeah, that's great.
We're going to be talking about the Villa game, giving us some of our thoughts on that, the manager hunt, the director of football hunt, and anything else that pops up.
Yeah,
so
and Becky, you were actually there, I guess, huh?
Yeah. Have you got a shot of the lineups? We could put that up while we're waiting for him to come back in.
Yeah, you'll have to do that, James.
There we go. So that was the lineup. Any surprises there? Oh.
No, I think that I think people at home, people in the ground, they thought the same thing. It was going to be the same team that finished, but that started, isn't it? At Palace. I think you'd never change a winning team. So, yeah, I was surprised. The one thing for me is Dyer not being in the squad. That was quite a bit of a surprise. It took a while for a few of us to realise that had actually happened. Nothing kind of coming from the club in terms of an injury either or anything like that. So, yeah, nice to see Basuma on the bench again. But, yeah, in terms of the thing for me when the game actually started, even before they scored, is that the way they kind of set up formation-wise was very different to Palace. Davis was quite high up the pitch, so was Porro against Palace. That was not the case against Villa. It's almost like they started and they were playing like a back five almost immediately. So, yeah, we were saying a lot through the game. It's like, it's the same personnel, but the whole kind of approach was very very negative, very solemn. I said, to the girls that I was standing with, you just think, had the Nagelsmann stuff kind of filtered through to the team, because they just seemed very flat and not really up for it. And, Villa just kind of scored, built their momentum, and just, it was very, very easy and very straightforward. In terms of lineups, I wasn't surprised it was the same team.
James, was you expecting anything different in terms of the lineup?
Oh, certainly not. That's roughly what I expected. That is exactly what I expected, to be completely honest. I mean, maybe Kulu comes in for Richie, but it was basically what I expected. It was, same as last time, carry on sort of thing. That's what it felt like.
Tottenham enjoyed a miserable first half at Villa Park, failing to have a shot at all. Had only one touch in the opposition box, and registered in that first half an expected goals of 0. Jack, what did you make of that first half performance in terms of how we set up and how we went about the game? Because it felt completely different to the Palace game.
Yeah, I think actually it was quite possibly the worst half of football for the entire season, in the sense that, I mean, obviously the Newcastle the first half was ridiculous, but even in that match, there was a point at which it was 3-0 where Harry missed a shot that he sometimes buries, which could have changed the trajectory of that game, right? This was, I mean, I've never seen anything like it, because it wasn't even an effort. There wasn't even an interest. As Becky was saying, the formation, there was just no interest in moving up the pitch. And I realized they were playing an exceedingly high line, but there are numerous ways to beat a high line. One of them is timing your runs right. Second is actually delivering a ball when a guy makes a run. And it didn't even seem like they were interested for 45 minutes of moving up the pitch. I mean, it was just ridiculous. I was flabbergasted. I mean, usually I'm not, going down 3-0, 4-0. I was like, okay, that's just, Spurs. But just the lack of interest, it seemed, was the problem for me.
Mm-hmm. Becky, Spurs in the Premier League, in terms of away games, we haven't won in 7 away games. You've probably been to most of those away games, to be fair. Going to Villa, I mean, we talked on the pod, I think Jack was with us last Wednesday, and we talked with some optimism, actually, that we felt there was perhaps something to build on after that Palace result. What was the feeling of you in the stands at Villa Park and those around you about the lead ahead of the game? Was you expecting better, or did you get what you thought you'd get?
No, I thought we'd kind of, I've said before that, Mason came in after the 5-1 at Newcastle. Then we had 4 days later, and then they had the United game where they had a good comeback from 2-0 down at half time. Then they had the Liverpool game where obviously went 3-0 down very early on, equalised, and then lost it at the end. And you just sort of felt there was some kind of momentum, and you could kind of see some sort of vision in terms of what he was trying to do. And then, Palace, I thought we were reasonably controlled at Palace. It wasn't the most amazing game, but it was a clean sheet, and it was a 1-0. And I think people felt that, the atmosphere was really great before kickoff. I think for those who've not been to Villa Park, there's no alcohol inside Villa Park in the away end, so everybody drinks in the Witten Arms beforehand, and then you kind of wander over, and there was lots of singing, there was chants for different players, and then we conceded in the 8th minute when really Villa just kind of, ripped us open, really. And then things, not toxic, but songs changed, and we went back to a bit like at Liverpool, sort of singing "How rubbish must we be? It's just 1-0" and that sort of stuff. But I think you did kind of feel that Mason is quite keen on making changes and kind of moves formation when we've got the ball and when we haven't got the ball. It was just like you just said, it was a completely different sort of setup. It was very flat. It was very lethargic. I wouldn't say the atmosphere was amazing at Villa. So it wasn't like the atmosphere affected them. They just looked very nervous again. Romero was flying in tackles here, there and everywhere. I thought Longley looked quite nervous. Porro lost the football quite a lot. Hoiberg lost the ball a lot. Skip's having to make challenges when Hoiberg's lost the ball. Sonny was offside a lot. Richarlison was offside a lot. You know, you could see there was a game. If there was any sort of game plan, it was oof it over from Romero and Sonny and Richarlison will run onto it. But that didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, it works, doesn't it? If you hold your run, and you don't have to, you've got with a high line, you've got to hold your run, and then just hope with the pace of Richarlison and Sonny that we've got the beating of their back line, which I think probably in a foot race between them, you'll probably have bank money on Sonny and Richarlison against them any day. So it was a strange one. One of the things, Jack, this record now, the last 5 games in the Premier League, Spurs have conceded 7 goals in the opening 10 minutes. 101, 5-11 and 8-12 versus Newcastle, 6 minutes 13 versus Man United, 2:48, 4:53 versus Liverpool, and 7:26 versus Aston Villa at the weekend. I mean, Mason's come in, he's tried to change things up, but one thing he hasn't been able to address is this habit of leaking and conceding early goals. What's causing it? What do we put it down to? Is it a mentality thing? Is it a tactical thing? What is it?
For me, it's completely a mentality issue and not being ready to play. I mean, it's fairly basic. I mean, whenever you're going to be in a hostile environment, particularly, and you're going to have a crowd on you, you're going to have a team coming at you. This is a big game for Villa. I mean, Villa's come from nowhere to be in the European spots. We've come down the table to wind up where we are. You know they're going to be up for it, and everything you should be talking about is let's play smart. Let's not take any unreasonable chances. Let's not fly like the goal. The first goal was an unnecessary challenge way high up the pitch, going to the ground by Romero. These are things you just don't do. You don't need to do these things. You want to, and the best way to take a crowd out, an opponent out, is hold the ball, knock it around. And I realize the high line, they were condensing the space, but they just consistently don't seem to be ready. It's like they're almost surprised that the other opponent is pressing high, that the other opponent is coming and giving you no time on the ball. It just doesn't seem like they're even registering that they're in a game yet. It seems the only explanation, because it's not like you're saying, hey, we play better when we're down 2 or 3 goals, so let's go ahead and concede some so that we can start playing. There's no way that's the discussion in the dressing room. So that's the only thing I can figure. You are just not mentally prepared to play the game.
Yeah, no, quite. James, that first half game, that first half performance, put the stats up here just to reinforce the point. 44% possession, 0 attempts, 0 shots on goal at all. I mean, what was your feeling after the end of that first half? Was it a surprise? Was it a shock? Or was it just, well, here we go, same thing again, nothing changes?
I don't know. It's the hope that kills you, innit? I mean, I think we were tactically outplayed by Villa. Emery to that extent. You know, they almost had a front 5 at some points. They were pressing so high, we couldn't play out from the back, to the point where you'd hope we could play along, but we couldn't even really manage that properly. You know, beyond 1 or 2 times when we got the ball in the forward positions. And just the mentality of the team just looked all bloody wrong. I don't know. You know, are they all ill or something? That didn't look like a team that wanted to go out and win a game of football. You know, yes, we were tactically outplayed, but we are still man for man better than they are. And you can win games where tactically you haven't been as good. You know, in the first half, to have 0.000 XG in any half of football for a club of our level with the players we have is just, it's just unacceptable, isn't it? Simple as it's just unacceptable.
And after having a week to prepare as well, you'd maybe understand that if they played Thursday night and it was Sunday afternoon or something like that. That's the other thing we couldn't get our heads around. That, you know, Conte was always moaning about having to play every 3 days, and we never kind of seemed to appear on the days when we had a week then either.
Interesting, James. I just want to jump on something you said there. You made the comment that man for man, we're better than Villa.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that, Becky?
Sorry, say that again. Sorry.
Man for man, Villa, we're better than Villa.
Yeah. And you know, I said this. I was at the game last season when we won 4-0, and it wasn't vastly different. You know, even people like Coutinho played then. It was just. I think James said it. It's a desire, and we've seen it so many times this season. Teams just start, Second one, they're on it. They go, and we don't. We're still, the only bright spark apart from Harry Kane was Basuma. He was hungry for the ball. He was passing it quickly. He was moving around. He was running at, kind of all over different positions. We don't do that. We just sort of were at walking pace. Even when Romero was standing in the kind of deepest position and he's kind of looking at where he was sort of going to be passing it, he's doing it at walking pace. And I had Kaz next to me and I said, this is really reminding me of the Milan game when we were 1-0 down on aggregate and we needed to score because obviously Villa scored after 8 minutes. And there was just no sort of urgency. And, Kane's coming so deep. At one point he was deeper than Hoiberg. And, you just look at it and think, something's not right here. It's so, like I said on Twitter yesterday, it was, you know me, I love going. I do genuinely still love going. The amount of times I've seen him lose away this season. But, I have a great group of people to go with. I have good fun. It's just there's this inevitability now. I've gone, oh, right, okay, we've gone behind again. Right, let's crack on then. And everyone had that same kind of impression on their face of, oh, right, here we go again.
Yeah. The just to touch on obviously conceding the first goal early on at 7 minutes 26 like we did, and then soon after that, Romero rushes out, gives away a free kick on the edge of the box. Jack, what's your take on Romero this season? What's going on with him? Because obviously he moved into the centre of the back three, if you like, or the back four, whichever it was, against Palace, and he got rave reviews for his performance. So we thought, well, okay, maybe we're going to see the Romero back. And then yet again, against Villa, we saw this hot-headedness, I don't know what it is, this lack of composure from Romero, which we've seen all too often of this season. What's going on with him? Because we don't see him doing that for Argentina, by the way.
Well, Romero has been a bit of an enigma because, as everyone knows, his performances have been between a 4 and a 9 given the game, and that even that tackle that he attempts on Watkins, I wonder, like, had he actually been successful, he would have been lauded for what a great aggressive play. They're on the road, they're trying to win the ball back, and if he had made the tackle and you recovered the possession, and then it would have been great. But that was my point earlier. You don't need to make that. At 7 minutes, you don't need to be that high at the pitch making that kind of challenge, particularly on a lad the size of Ollie Watkins. I mean, that's not IU. Jordan, he had a different forward against Crystal Palace that he was generally responsible for. Ollie Watkins is a different animal. And so it's definitely something that has been all over the map. I mean, I remember, I feel like it was Vertonghen's second season where he had a real struggle with Sherwood. Help me out here. Something along the lines of Sherwood. Yeah. So, I mean, and people were questioning him. And of course, he came in to be one of the best center backs we've seen at the club. So I still think the talent is there. I think part of it is he's got to know in the back of his head that he does not have world-class defenders around him. He does not have world-class midfielders in front of him. So he may be trying to do too much too often, and he's not quite good enough to pull that off, maybe. I don't know. But I think it's a combination of his mentality being still not ready to know when to go and when not, and then followed by the fact that he's playing with a lot of crap defenders all season long, and he may be just trying too damn hard.
Yeah. Do you think that, James, that Romero's frustrated in the Spurs team?
Well, yeah, wouldn't you be? I mean, I think with Romero, it definitely comes down to the environment and the mood. I think he's definitely, I think everyone agrees he's an emotional player, right? Yeah, he doesn't have this level of inconsistency for Argentina, but I imagine the mood there is completely different, right? In the Argentinian camp. Whereas here it's, all over the place. There's a bad smell coming out of the kitchen. You get your breakfast and there's something, the sausage is undercooked, right? That's going to affect a player like Romero more than it affects certain other players. But yeah, Romero either puts in a 4 out of 10 performance or he puts in a 10 out of 10 performance. There's not really much. There's very little in between Romero. You either get world class or League One. And I get why he's going for that tackle. He wants to win the ball. But he's not the only one at fault for that goal, by the way. Our defending as a whole was pretty dreadful. Skip and Longley were on the same player when Skip should have been covering the pass into the box, the ball into the box, when Longley was 1-on-1. I get you want to double up, but at the same time, if they're going to cross it, which they most likely will, you want to actually be intercepting the ball before it's in a scoring position. Like our defending, there were 2 or 3 players in our box that weren't doing anything. They're in no man's land. And yes, that was a brash tackle from Romero, but it's our other defenders as well who are making clear errors in what they're doing. And I don't necessarily blame Skip entirely because I can see his intent, but also his positioning is wrong. And it's the job of any coach to turn around and say, okay, your positioning in this situation was wrong. Here's where you should have been, and coach that into him. But somehow with, Antonio Conte, that hasn't been coached into him. I don't. He wasn't the only one at fault. Is my point also.
Yeah. No, don't agree with you.
Paul Walker makes a good point in the comments about Forster, is that he made 2 amazing saves. Obviously, the free kick was in the second half. The 2 amazing saves he made in the first half. I can remember the one when he literally grabbed the ball, on its way into goal. I think his position of the free kick was really poor. He's obviously stepped too far to his right and therefore then can't make it back to his left. But it would have been far worse had Forster not made those saves. I think I kind of forgot about those. Because I never really thought we were winning that game. Really, as soon as we went 1-0 down, it just didn't really feel like we were going to get anything. Particularly when Kane misses that chance early on in the first half, that goes in. It's a different beast. When that doesn't go in, it was like we've not got anything going for us today. We've not got any of the second balls. Kane isn't scoring the goal that type of goal that you would expect him to. So we just didn't have anything going for us, really.
It was interesting, wasn't it? I don't know if anyone of you saw Mason's comments after the game, but he reflected that he couldn't remember Forster having to make any saves. And I was like, well, I remember a few. I thought that was quite interesting. Second half, Becky, we seem to be a different side. The stats sort of bear that out as well. We dominated possession, 58% possession, 5 attempts, 2 on target, 3 off target, expected HG 1.18. Interestingly, Villa's went down to 0.23. What changed in that second half from where you were sitting?
There was a bit more urgency. I think we were saying around us, we've got to equalise before Villa go and get a second one, which unfortunately didn't happen. Making the changes helped. I think he did make the changes at 1-0. I think, he did. Kulusevski came on, and like I said, Basuma came on. So there was a bit more kind of free movement. Skip got booked, which I think was possibly why he subbed Skip. I thought Hoiberg played really poor this week. I'm not normally one for kind of saying he's he isn't being great, but then you could argue half the team haven't this season. But he just seemed to be more of the arm waving and just sort of second to everything. And people were saying yesterday on Twitter maybe he's tired and he's played every game and yada yada yada. So Skip goes off, Basuma comes on. He, like I said a minute ago, he was much more sort of freer, and Kulu was taking players on more and getting in behind. There were a few crosses. I remember there was a curling shot that he had that went wide, and it's just that kind of. And then when they scored, I think maybe when Kane scored in injury time, Perisic was on at that point as well. So they were trying to kind of send crosses from the left-hand side, from Perisic's side. And Danjuma was on then, bless him. Danjuma only ever seems to come on when we're like chasing an equaliser. There was just a bit more kind of, more attacking play, but that's what you would hope, really.
Sorry, guys, I froze then.
Yeah. Well, I'll say one thing. I want to jump on what you're saying, Becky. I mean, my recollection of the game for Hoiberg wasn't great either, but realistically, compared to Skip, he was fantastic because if you just look at Hoiberg's stats, which I'm looking at right now, he won most of his ground duels, 5 recoveries, 2 clearances, 3 interceptions, long balls accuracy, 5 of 6, 2 chances created, 68 touches. Right? When you look at Skip, who I thought hid particularly all game long, particularly in the first half, there are so many times where he's behind a defender in the buildup, and he's not moving to get it into a spot to receive the ball. He had 21 touches. For a central midfielder, he had 21 touches in the match, 0 tackles. And that's not him. That's so unusual for him. He's one of the most industrious players. I mean, even when we're playing poorly, you can look at him and see him really putting in the effort. He was not good. And so, he had a yellow, so that makes sense for him to come out. But he was... he only attempted like 15 passes. So it's just really odd that he had such a poor game. And that really, I think, hurt us a lot. But when Basuma came in, like you were saying, it definitely changed. I mean, I think everyone universally has been wanting to see him in a formation that lets him play. And it showed in that 30 minutes. He turned the game around in possession. And like you're saying with Kulu, who actually was still, his final ball is pretty dreadful. He was making things happen just by the positions he was taking. He stretches defenses because he gets so wide and creates opportunity and can beat a man. I mean, we have so few people who can take on a player and beat somebody. So it did change the game significantly. And so there was that time when we looked like we might actually get the equalizer, but unfortunately another rash challenge from Romero, and again, Forster probably wasn't in a great position, but that ball wasn't hit that hard. But it is what it is.
It's interesting. I was just trying to look at the full Premier League table. I couldn't get it in front of me, but we can't keep, as a team, conceding the amount of goals that we're conceding. I think we've conceded more. I think there's only the three bottom teams have conceded more goals than Tottenham this season, and that goes to show where would we be without Kane, by the way, who got the penalty. Obviously, yet another record in the Premier League, I think, in terms of goals scored, or equal in the amount of record goals scored in the Premier League season, with historically with what's his name? Salah. Obviously, the American guy, Man City guy, Haaland changes that. But what do we need in terms of the next two games against Brentford and Leeds to get something out of it? What needs to change, James, for you?
I think there has to be some actual clear intent from the players. Again, I they obviously probably know a bit more than we know about what's going on because they're there, and we all know Daniel Levy likes to hang around in the training ground or whatever. So I'm sure some rumours are going about or something. There needs to immediately be an adjustment in morale, however that happens, right? And secondly, if we set up against Brentford like we set up against Villa, we'll lose. Despite being better player for player, we will be tactically outplayed. And then as soon as we go behind, the shoulders drop. The shoulders drop when we go out on the pitch, actually. And then we'll just get battered because Brentford are good. What actually needs to blimmin' happen against Brentford, see, didn't swear, is I think Basuma needs to play. I think Sarr needs to play. I actually think we do need to go over midfield three and match them in the midfield. Emerson in a back line has to make aggressive runs to support the wide players. And we need to very much match Brentford player for player. We can't allow a situation like happened against Villa, where we're outmanned and they're able to create overloads in certain areas of the pitch, and then they're able to defend in a compact 4-4-2. Because ultimately, this isn't tactical wizardry. This is stuff that I would hope you would learn from doing the most basic coaching course available to you. Although that's a separate rant I have about the FA's coaching courses. It's not difficult. It's just some tactical adaptations to the way Brentford play, and kicking some care into the players, which bye, Craig. He obviously doesn't like my view on how we should tackle the Brentford game.
He's not enamored of your tactical analysis at all.
Obviously, Craig would be playing a 4-3-3 Gegenpress, so fair enough.
Yeah.
I'll take the L. What do you think, Becky, we should do differently against Brentford?
I agree with all that. We've been calling out for it all season, and nothing's ever changed. I think even though I said then that against Palace, we did change formation when we didn't have the ball, but we still sort of setting up in that kind of similar to midfield sort of setup. It would be great to see Sarr playing Basuma. I just don't think it happened. I think whether we talked about this after Newcastle game, whether there is this committee thing that is, kind of organising who plays when and that sort of thing. I just think it will be the same old. Dave's just put in the chat there about them being dead rubbers and we should play them, but I just think they'll play the team that they arguably think is the one that they've most practiced and the most set up to play for the two remaining games. But they're both easily losable games. Brentford, like we said, are on it, and Leeds are fighting for their lives. So, yeah, I'm not particularly hopeful.
I think it would be a shocking decision, and one that I would question whether or not. I mean, I'm sure no one here is thinking Mason should be considered, but the idea that you would not start Basuma in this game unless for some reason your world-class medical department is telling you he can't go 90, then that's a dereliction of duty. Because I'm sorry, Pierre has got 4,000 plus minutes, and we can say what we do and don't like about him, but the guy could use time to sit on his ass for a little while and watch the game. I mean, you just Skip and Hoiberg, you would never play the two of them together on purpose if you didn't have to. And there's no reason why those two should be on the field at the same time as a two. Now again, if you were bringing in a great attacking midfielder to play in a 3 or something different, then okay, fine. And you want them to be your pivot, I still wouldn't be in favor of it, but at least I could see the logic. I just can't imagine how you don't play Basuma. I'll be furious if he's not in the lineup. It's ridiculous.
I mean, it's said they're dead rubber games. They're not. And please don't laugh when I say this, but some European football is still in our hands. I mean, it might be the Conference League for the most part, but it's still European football. Like, I don't get the idea that we should finish 8th, so we're not in Europe. I'd still rather see us play in Europe than nothing. I mean, end of the day, if Jose Mourinho's Roma side can win it, we can win it, can't we? It's still a bloody trophy. I don't care. You know, the same people who say, it doesn't matter, are the same people who want to take the League Cup seriously. It's a European trophy, right? Something, the scum in North London have never won. So, to add another one would be lovely. And there's still a very slim, but slim possibility we could get Europa League, which is definitely worth winning. If that, it's worth going deep in. I mean, I'd prefer we had European football, and, there's not much money, but there's some, isn't there? And there's still games of football that we can play in. So, I think we absolutely should adapt a little bit. Yeah, as Steve says, who doesn't want a trophy? It's another opportunity to win something, isn't it? So they're not dead in my view.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. We'll get onto the debate Europa versus Conference League. Just looking at the league table, where that result leaves us. I mean, obviously, Brighton still got 2 games in hand, already 1 point ahead of us. So you've got to their performance against Arsenal, you've got to suspect they're going to pick up at least another 3 points, you would think. So that where do you see us ending up, Jack, in that pile?
Just checking something real quick here. So Brighton have Newcastle, Southampton, City, and Villa.
Yeah,
that Villa Brighton game at the end of the season would be actually probably entertaining to watch. So I based on what I expect from Spurs, they'll surprise us one game, and I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they pick up 3 points, and that gets you a still European spot. I think if you pick up one of these 2 games, I think Aston Villa's on 4, goal differential's tight, but I think you could keep 7th, and I know a lot of people would rather us finish 8th, but I expect they'll do everything possible to finish outside of Europe and then get Conference League.
Interesting. Becky, where do you see us coming in that pile?
Yeah, well, I was just looking at it here as well because, Brentford beat us. They've got 56 and they've got a better goal difference than us. Yeah, I don't know. I think after Palace, I thought we would finish 6th. I think then when Brighton got beat to Everton, I was obviously delighted that they beat Arsenal last night. But I thought we might catch them. I thought they were stumbling. I thought their kind of fatigue was kicking in with the games, every sort of 3 days. But yeah, I think now it is 7th or 8th. I'm with James. I would prefer some sort of European football, even if we're just if we get to go to like Cyprus at half term or something. But yeah, I think that's overall getting over 8th. I think like Harry Kane said, it's in some kind of competition, isn't it? I think rather than finishing 8th. But then the flip side of that is we don't play Europe. We don't play, every 3 days, October, November kind of time, February, March time. So, that's what Newcastle have done this season. So yeah, it's a tricky one, really.
I mean, Villa. If you're looking at it, we don't deserve Europe, do we? At all,
No.
really, on the face of it. You look at those teams. Brighton absolutely deserves Europe. Villa with the performances since Emery's been in there, they deserve it in my mind. But yeah, it'll be interesting.
I think the team that gets the points that puts them in the position deserves to be there. I mean, Villa under Emery all season, finishes above us, but it's over the whole season, not since the new manager came in. But I mean, we haven't been good, but we will be better than those teams next season, provided we don't get Steve from the local pub in to manage us. So I want to be there. Interesting.
Okay, so in the group chat, just reading through some of the comments, there's a mix between 7th and 8th. It's how things change in a week, Jack. I swear, a week ago we was all confident we could get 6th, and now we're thinking about maybe getting 8th, probably 8th, maybe 7th.
Yeah, and the reality is that if you actually don't pick up a point, let's say you pick up 1 point in these last 2 games, you're still you're talking about close to relegation form since Conte left. I'm not even counting the Southampton draw, which is, again, just so I think I saw this. I think this is accurate. I don't remember how many goals. Southampton has scored 31 goals, and I think 15% of them are against Spurs. I mean, it's the form over the last 2 months is very close to just above the relegation line. You're talking about a 37, 38 point haul, and that's how bad they've been. And it's not like they've been playing. It's not like we've just run through the top 6 over and over and over again either. I mean, so I'm a little concerned, to say the least, about these players, and I think that's why I think it's rational for some of the people. Well, maybe slightly irrational to say if you've been at the club longer than 3 or 4 years, you need to go. There's just something not right in that dressing room.
Yeah, though it's interesting. So moving on from the game, then we'll talk about Brentford, the game on Saturday, in a little while. Just looking ahead to, in terms of the new manager search, Emery is a really interesting example of what you can do if you get the right manager in charge at a club. They made a change halfway through the season. Since Emery has come in, he's averaging 1.96 points per game. The 3rd best rate of any manager to take charge of at least 10 games in the Premier League this term, after Pep with 2.41 and Arteta with 2.31. I mean, that's just phenomenal return from Emery since he's gone to Villa. Becky, does it give you hope that if we appoint the right manager in the summer, that we can quickly turn things around and go back to being a force to be reckoned with in the Premier League?
I'd like to hope so, because like we said before, surely we've got, even with, like you're saying about some of these players that do need to be moved on, remembering the 100 players that are coming back off loan, surely we have got a better squad than Villa. I was standing there on Saturday going, we beat this team more or less 4-0 last season. It's more or less the same team this season, and we aren't even in the contest. This is Villa. People are putting on my Twitter now that we lost 4-1 to Leicester and they're getting hammered against Liverpool. You're saying then about the percentage of goals of Southampton or against Tottenham? Leicester's the same. How are these teams doing it? Because they're arguably not got the same squad that we have. So it is something's not right. The culture, the stagnant nature of the squad, like set up and formation that they just don't want to play or they can't play. Yeah, we need, but this is why we were saying all kind of, for the last, what feels like 2 months, is that we wanted someone to come in, just kind of galvanize everybody. We thought that Mason was sort of doing it, in the interim. That seems to have gone as well. I know it is, someone put in the comments, it is only 1 game, but he looked a little bit kind of lost in terms of what to do. I know he made the substitutions, but it was,
which I'll give him credit for,
too late. Yeah,
too late. It was on 60 though for Spurs. That's really early.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, well, I think we need someone to come in, don't we? But again, I've said this before. I don't necessarily know who. If it is going to be Slot, now that he's won the league with Feyenoord, I can't really imagine De Zerbi coming to us unless he was literally seeing the money, because he's got a great setup at Brighton. Why would he leave that? Even, the Brentford manager, same thing. Why would he leave that to come to us? I don't know. I'd like to hope that we can, see the kind of form that we had this time last year. But yeah, in terms of who does that, I don't know.
I mean, with it's not just about, for the next manager at Tottenham, is it? It's not just about someone that could come in and sort the players out tactically. We do need a character that is going to absolutely address the cultural issues that have worked its way into the club since Pochettino left over the last, three or 4 years. Nagelsmann, on the face of it, I think for most people, was seen as that person that could come in and do play football the right way, have that tactical ability, have the ability to take on the project that Spurs and changes culturally. Obviously news come out on Friday before the game that he was never really an option for us, and the club said they've never really spoken to him. What did you make, James, of that announcement or leaking of that story to the press for them to report? What was the club trying to achieve, and what's their motivations?
It's just fucking laughable, isn't it? Like, for God's sake, yes, the club wanted to leak it to the press so that Spurs fans didn't think when we missed out on him that it was because of the club's failures when we were never really looking into him. That's like Alistair Campbell levels of bloody spin right there in the wrong way. What do you mean? That makes me ask, why weren't we looking at him when we bloody should have been? Oh yeah, mate, totally weren't looking at him. Yeah, totally didn't invade Iraq. Like, it's just laughable. It's completely ridiculous. I don't know what the club were trying to achieve there, because surely someone at Spurs Communication, whoever's in charge of that, must have realised using that phrasing, or that phrasing coming out, being leaked, was going to elicit the exact response I had for a large section of the fan base who are already quite annoyed, right? That, or, Daniel Levy, mate, hire me. I'll take over communications for the club. I'll do a better job. It's just ridiculous. What do you like? And this is the other thing I saw today. Oh yeah, Daniel Levy's looking for a new director of football. I'm sorry, looking. What's he been doing for the past 2 months? He's been sat in the local bar. I don't understand if we're actually run this badly, which I refuse to believe. I just think our communication is so poor. It's like we've got an arthritic old man in to run our communications who doesn't know what Twitter is. I genuinely, it's appalling.
Yeah. Jack, what did you make of that leak, if you like, or that release to the press in the way it was done?
I'll summarize. I agree with James, and I'll just, try to summarize what I think he said. You're either lying or you're incompetent. Which one do you want us to go with? Because if you're not at least considering him, then yes, you're incompetent. And if you are considering him and you just want to spin it, then you're lying. So there's only two options. I'm sorry, in my opinion. I'm not a Nagelsmann fan. He wasn't even near the top of my personal list, but still, give me a break.
Becky, what do you think? Did it impact the crowd on Saturday? Do you think the Nagelsmann, the way it was leaked, was it talked about on the stands?
Well, like I said, I watched Friday's show, and I went out, nice sunny evening. I went around to my friends, came back about 9:20, put cheese on, and everyone's mentioning Nagelsmann, and I'm like, what's happened? What's gone on? The last thing I heard on Thursday was that the Daily Mail said that there was nobody else coming in for Nagelsmann, and it would be a clear run for Spurs. I'd obviously missed it, whatever announcement or leak or whatever it was that had happened, and then like I said, I didn't hear people particularly mentioning Nagelsmann per se, but there was lots of "we want our club back" and "leave you out" in the crowd pretty much as soon as Villa scored. But like I said earlier, I think we're only guessing, aren't we? But I just thought, for me, one reason why it was so flat was that you just think those players that thought there was going to be something positive and a change and something to look forward to, and now it's not. You just think, how much does it impact the players? I don't know. You don't know how much they know.
No, it's got to, hasn't it? It's got to impact the players, surely. That sort of mess at the top of the club. I think it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because obviously, there's been growing discontent amongst the fans over the course of this season about the decision making of Levy, not just this season and ENIC over the past few years. Even I get the sense of even the most balanced and level-headed of fans that perhaps aren't, strong ENIC outers, or perhaps a little bit on the fence and not particularly, see the pros and cons both ways. Even they're now moving towards a more, we've got to do something. This club needs to change. And I sense that from, going to the ground, same as Becky does, and from social media, etc. Jack, you're quite a level-headed and balanced Spurs fan, I would say. Where are you currently in this ownership?
I have been, you're right. I've always been accused of being far too diplomatic, and I have found myself starting to swing to the inevitable. And James, you said it earlier. You said, I refuse to believe that we're run this poorly. And at some point, you have to start to say, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And so I'm starting to think that, yes, they are actually that bloody incompetent, because you don't appoint the janitor to run your football club at the most crucial time of their season. That decision still is mind-numbing. I realize that, yes, there was this notion that we all were saying, oh, maybe Conte should stay in Italy because we play so much better when he's not there. But you still, if you said earlier, look at the record. Villa Emery's clocking up a 76-point season if you take it over 38 games, right?
Yeah.
And you look at the roster and just go through. Ashley Young is the right back. Okay.
He's 37.
All credit to Ashley Young. I admire the ever-living shit out of that guy, right? I mean, Leon Bailey is I know him in the CONCACAF. He's a good player, but I mean, he's not a world beater. He's a good player. I mean, I'd take him as a squad player, but that's about it. I mean, my point is that you have to start thinking that, what are they doing? And again, you are now getting into zones of, the 76 days where we did not have a manager, between last Mason's stint. So it just seems to me, I don't understand their decision making. I don't understand. The evidence is suggest that they are basically completely clueless as to how to proceed, what they want to do.
Yeah, I agree. Becky, where are you currently at? Similar?
Yeah, I think, like we said, when we're kind of fourth and third, and we've said before, we had a reasonably decent start. We didn't in terms of performances, but kind of one of our best starts to a Premier League and scoring goals and that sort of stuff. You can kind of be like, yeah, things aren't really great behind the scenes, but we're where we are, and that's okay. As things sort of changed when Bentancur got injured, and then Conte did that big rant. And I've read a lot over the weekend about people going, oh, yeah, those people who wanted Conte out, it's all on you. Look what's happened. And now we're at 7th. And I'm like, yeah, but I said on here, it was really boring to watch, and we weren't, setting the world on fire, winning everything, winning the FA Cup and that sort of thing, were we? So, I must admit, I did feel we needed a change of Conte. We did needed it. But I said earlier, it should have been Mason then. Why bother with Stellini? We talked on here, I know, about how he seemed to kind of galvanise the squad a bit, but there were times when he was arguing with Mason, and they just didn't seem to know what they were doing between them. So there was a month wasted. We're now like another month on. Mason's been in charge for like 3 weeks, is it now?
Yeah.
And we're just falling down the league. And as we fall down the league, I've had lots of people mentioning Newcastle to me. They're like, remember when Newcastle got relegated, and Everton are in strife, and although we've got the financial side behind us, so we're not similar to Everton in that way, we are just falling down the league, and other teams are getting stronger and finding, avenues to kind of improve their sort of revenue, and we're just going to get lost. And that's the thing. It's just like we're trying to pretend to be a big club, but we're really a mid-table club. And that kind of, the idea that today, when the Hotspur membership things have come out and said, oh, we get priority to the go-kart, to put that at the top, I think kind of put some people over the edge. That should have been like hidden underneath the voucher from the club shop, or do you know what I mean? It was just like, we're putting it right at the top. You're going to get priority to the go-kart. Yippee!
Well, to be fair, you'd probably have more fun at the go-karting than watching Spurs, Becky. So maybe that's why.
Yeah, I mean, it is a good point though, James. You alluded to the incompetence of the comms department and the comms team and stuff, and even that from a marketing perspective, you would think, hang on, let's sense check this a little bit here. You know, are we really going to put that at the top? Do we really want to be thinking about maybe, yes, it's a benefit. Put it down like you said, Becky, hide it down the bottom, put it in the small print. You know, add it as an additional benefit at a later point. Don't put it now because all you're doing is
it just fuels that thing. There used to be a football club over there, and I've seen that retweeted so much today.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry, but if me, a student who only knows anything about politics, heavy metal, some video games, and a bit about football, and all of his political communications knowledge comes from reading a few Alistair Campbell articles, watching Yes Minister, and watching the thick of it, can tell you that your communication with the general public is atrocious, then I fail to see what the people in charge actually learn. I'm sure there's much more qualified people out there, surely. It boggles the mind. I don't understand it. I like how, and if that's how incompetent the communications department, maybe you're right, Jack. Maybe the club are genuinely just that incompetent to the point where you could probably pick 5 blokes from the pub
on the football side,
and we do a better job. Yeah, I'm not knocking Levy on the commercial side.
Commercial side's been fantastic.
Yeah, he does that well, but the football side.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, is it just a case of hold out for Munn to officially start working for us in a few weeks and hope things change then, Jack?
I mean, I'm not okay. I am not a huge fan of the city football club model. I mean, I have fundamental opposition to I'm not. It's not the multi-club system, but just the backing, the funding. I'm not a fan of the ownership of the way football is going. But with that said, he at least comes from an organization that runs a football operation very, very shrewdly. And yes, they have money to burn, I guess you could say, in terms of player wages. So that certainly makes a difference. But I guess you could hope that he has some knowledge of how the football operations are supposed to be integrated, and therefore what the structure should look like, and how a consistent identity from your academy all the way up through your first team, with coaches on the same page and everyone pulling the same direction, can execute. Because again, City's pulling some people over the years, they pulled some young people into that squad that no one had ever heard of, because they identify talent and that sort of thing. So I guess there's a little bit of hope, but I don't know Moon from Adam. So
But one of the things that he's apparently known well for, and what he's done in previous clubs, is his communications with the fans. Fans have been top notch. I mean, and that's something that this club desperately needs from a footballing side: better communication between the fans. Obviously, we got the implementation of the fans advisory board. We had one of the founders of Spurs Reach is going to be one of those people sitting on that fan advisory board. It was great to speak to him and them. In terms of moving forward, obviously Levy's not going to sell the club. I think it's going to take a miracle for Levy to sell, so that's not on the options list. How does he recover? How do we recover as a football club, James, to move forward? Because I'm acutely aware that he's got to change something. Something's got to change in order to stop this decline. Otherwise, as Becky's alluded to, we could be a Newcastle, heading further and further down the league.
Well, I think a Nottingham Forest could be a more apt comparison. Former European champions who languished in the lower leagues for decades. Okay, well, it has to come from the top, right? That's where all cultures from any organization, any society, party, no matter what it is, even if this group is, 5 blokes in a pub, right? So we've brought in a new guy to run the footballing side, and we're looking for director of football. Okay. This is good on the one hand, because if Levy can just be in charge of the commercial side, have an overview, that's fine. We have to hope this Munn guy is competent. I mean, sounds like we're hiring Malcolm Tucker to run our football club, but there we are. We need to get a competent director of footballing, which I hope. There's plenty of good ones out there. Looks like we're going for the guy at Brentford. All right, he seems to have done okay with the whole Moneyball stuff. I'm not necessarily opposed to that. The next thing that needs to happen once we have some competent higher-ups running the football side of things, obviously, is get a manager. But we have to get a manager who knows he's going to be backed. It's going to be a long-term project. And we're going to have to really gut the squad. I mean, I saw 2 of our youth teams have won things recently. We do have an academy that is producing some brilliant young players. And I'm not saying, put, a bunch of 15-year-olds on the pitch, but we need a manager who's going to be able to bed some of them in. Like even at City, right? Foden. Pep managed to bed Foden in. We need that clear route to the first team. And the easiest way to do that is have a clear tactical identity from the top to the bottom. So if you're in the under-15s, you're playing, I don't know, left wing. You're playing in the same way the guy who's starting for the first team is. We also need to get a bloody manager for the women's team because they don't have one. But it's just simple stuff. It's stuff Cruyff laid out in the 70s. I'm not saying you have to play Cruyffian football, but it's just about having a simple philosophy and giving young players a direct, simple route to the first team, having a competent management structure, and having a manager who can actually do their job. And then we make do with the finances that are available to us, which should be fairly substantial, top 5, 6 in the country. None of these things I don't think are very complicated, but seemingly they're impossible tasks for the hierarchy. So I don't know, maybe I should go into football management and run a football club.
Interesting. Jack had a really good question come in actually on topic, linking to your expertise. Are there NFL teams that care more about their off-field success than what they do on the pitch?
Well, if you were to ask,
he's trying to compare us as to an American type franchise.
Yeah. I mean, you could make that argument of franchises like the Cleveland Browns, who would have been relegated to the non-football leagues if we had a pro-rel situation in the NFL. I guess the answer is yes. There have been owners who have been uninterested in being ambitious in the NFL. That's certainly the case. There aren't so many of those left anymore. Those older owners have cycled out to a large extent, and now you're just dealing with incompetence, less so than just people who aren't that concerned. But the thing though is with American sports, which has its downsides, is you can't get relegated. You have revenue share. The NFL is the most socialist organization on the planet that resides in one of the most capitalist frenzied places on earth, right? Because you have revenue sharing, the TV money, all that sort of stuff is shared. The commercial side is really, you get some of your own commercial activity because that comes from your stadium and that sort of stuff. But so much of the revenue is shared. You have a maximum number of players you can have. You get a draft. You get a salary cap. I mean, if you can't compete in the NFL, you are truly incompetent because the playing field is so level. And basically it's all about, if you get a quarterback, then you can compete, and you keep them healthy, then you can compete, because it's all based around one player for the most in the NFL. Baseball is a little different. Looks a little bit more like football in Europe, and a little bit more imbalance among teams in terms of revenue and ability to spend and that sort of stuff. But the NFL, less so. You don't have any owners who are just uninterested in competing. Most of them are really trying, and so therefore you get a huge changeover. You get a lot of teams going from worst to first on a regular basis. So it's designed. It is the league's goal to have competitive balance. The dynasty that the New England Patriots were with Tom Brady was a bit of an anomaly against what they really want, which is every team having a shot. Their fans thinking, hey, this could be our year. Almost all the fans actually think they've got a shot coming into, to be good really fast.
Yeah. Interesting. It's going to be an interesting close season, really, with, like I say, with Munn coming in and the director of football seemingly to be sorted out, and the manager. Let's talk about the next manager, if I may. Here we have the latest bets from Paddy Power in terms of who our next manager is. So Arne Slot, favourite, Alonso close behind, and then Brendan Rodgers, annoyingly, seems to be gaining pace and traction. Thomas Frank in fourth. Then we've got Company, Enrique, Postecoglou and Potter making up the top 8 contenders. Becky, out of that, where are you putting your pound?
Do you know what? I'll put it on the Celtic manager. There we go. He's Australian, like Moniz.
Yeah, good choice. I've been an advocate of Postecoglou for many weeks and a while now. I think he's the right man, potentially the right man. James, where are you? Where's your pound?
Where's my pound? Well, do you know what? Funnily enough, my mate. Sorry, this is going to extend the question a little bit. My mate bets on stuff a fair bit. He's actually made quite a lot of money out of it. He's bet for some reason on Frank, and he's usually right, so I'm going to say Frank.
Okay. Well, interestingly, it come out in the papers today, didn't it, that they are braced for a summer approach from Tottenham for Thomas Frank. I do wonder how much it will cost to get him out of Brentford, though. It would be interesting. Jack, where are you seeing it going? Where are you putting your pound?
It's a question of who I think will get it on this list or who I want.
Who you think? I think let's talk about who we think.
Okay, well, because I have no idea what the ownership and the board is thinking at any given point, I could just throw a dart. The only one I'll say is definitely not going to happen is Vincent Kompany. I just don't think that they're unless, but I mean, because obviously signed a new contract. I mean, I would say my fear is that they're going to get Javi, or something like that. I guess that would be my fear. My preference is for Slaughter or Postecoglou.
Yeah. My fear was that we would stick with Mason. That was my fear, partly because of the language that he's been using. As a man, as in the interim, he's not taught like he's an interim. He's very much been he's openly come out and said he wants a job. He's openly come out and talked about everything seems to be more long-term than it does 3 more games or the final 4 games of the season. And I genuinely felt like, are we heading towards a Mason's going to come in, blah, blah, blah. I do feel now, and I love, Becky, your take on this, that he hasn't done enough in the games that he's had to be considered for the job. Would you agree?
Yeah, I noticed in the comments people were saying before, and I said about, only 1 game he's not done great in, but I don't know. Like I said, I think last week, I think it's just a little bit too early for him. It's great that he wants to do it. I said this last week. I would much prefer a manager who actually wants to be here than somebody like even maybe Xabi Alonso or even Kompany. If they did come, they would be looking at what else afterwards. So we talked last week about, the writing was on the wall when Conte got an 18-month contract. Pretty much as soon as he started, it was almost sort of saying, I'm not really staying. I'm staying until something better comes along. So I like the fact that Mason wants to do it. I think we've got a greater chance of keeping Kane for a bit longer if Mason's there. But is he the right person in the long term? Not necessarily. I would prefer him to be assistant manager. But in terms of who we get, like I said, I just want someone with progressive football, attacking style. But if we're getting you Dodgy to come, are we going to tailor it to a person who plays 5 at the back? That's also quite a depressing thing too, because then you think, oh, crikey, we're still going to carry on playing this way that our players aren't really suited to, and we can't seem to be able to play. And yeah.
I mean, if we are sticking with 3 at the back or 5 at the back, the only one on that list is Thomas Frank, isn't it? So that would be the obvious choice in terms of who we'd go for. But the most convenient choice is Rodgers, isn't it, James?
Yes, in the same way that dipping your balls into Tabasco sauce is convenient. I mean, it's very easy. You can go to the fridge, pull some out right now, and do it right now. Very convenient. Still, correct me if I'm wrong, Jack and Craig. Do you fancy doing that? It's very convenient, but do you fancy doing that?
I'll say no.
Yeah, we got one no, Craig. What do you think?
I'm out. All
right, we got 3 no's on that one. So, that's my position on Rodgers. No, not a brilliant manager, if I'm honest. Cocked up at Leicester, right? Sorry, I'm such a child. But no, yeah, on the one hand, it is convenient. But like I said, there are some things that are very convenient, but are not brilliant. Convenience is not necessarily...
Why is it more convenient than Potter? Because they're both out of jobs.
Yeah, I think that. I guess my take on that, Becky, is a good question. Actually, my thinking for why it's more convenient is I think that Brendan Rodgers would walk over broken glass to come and take the job, whereas I think Potter probably we would need to convince him of wanting to come to Tottenham and the project.
Right.
Rodgers would just literally he would do anything to for the job.
Like Nuno.
He would probably do what James just described if the job was offered. But I might be wrong. But that's my feeling on it. Is that it's a lot more convenient for that one, and I just think that would be the car crash appointment for Spurs if they were to do that.
Oh.
But again, that's where it would really kind of tip some people over the edge, because if that's the case, then they should have done that the night he got sacked. Then why have we waited nearly 2 months for that? That's stupid.
Yeah, that's the other thing, isn't it? I mean, I do want to touch on that. Actually, it's a really good point, Becky. You talked about the timing. There's been a lot of noise in the press and on social media on the time it's taken for us to make an appointment, and comparing us to the last time with Nuno, where we went however many days it was, and saying that we're likely to surpass that figure. But for me, and I'd love your view, I don't think you can really start the counter until the end of the season, right? We was never going to make an appointment before the end of the season. So, I think the start doesn't look, for me, the clock ticks from, the day after the last game of the season.
Yeah, but by doing that wrote our season off, didn't it? I think that's possibly where all the kind of toxicities come from. Because if they had said, right, fair enough, even if it was like for 3 months, I mean, you could have someone for 3 months, couldn't you, on a basis, and then say, well, look in the summer to extend it, or give you a 1-year contract or something like that. There are ways of doing it, but like you said, because they're not really into the footballing side of it, they don't even do that side of it very well. So there could have been ways. I was thinking about this today about the guy that's coming at Leicester and the guy that's coming at Leeds, even Hodgson. People were talking about the guy that's coming at Huddersfield. Are these managers going to be in this time next season? Probably not. But they still took on the job for the 3 months that they were asked to do it for. And, that's the thing. We could have salvaged something if they'd been a bit more strategic about things. But that's the problem. It doesn't seem like they are able to do that. And that's where this sort of idea is that they're just making it up as they go along a bit. Yeah.
I think that is fair. That is fair. So it's going to be interesting then which way the season goes in terms of the managerial appointment in the summer and the director of football. Just a final thing for you, Jack. If looking in, do you think we will appoint a director of football before the manager? Will it go the other way, or do you think it could be simultaneously announced?
Oh, well, the third option I hadn't considered, actually. I guess you could. I guess you could package it together because you're negotiating with 2 parties and you're trying to say, okay, will you work together, type of thing, and then you can announce it. That would be a sign of a coordinated, executed strategy that has so far escaped evidence by this board and ownership group in the recent past. But I had assumed that they were going to get a director of football in before they got a manager, and that was one of the problems, reportedly, obviously, with the Nagelsmann non-talks. Is that as I said 2 or 3 months ago on one of these, I was like, if you're a manager, you want to know what your structure is and who you're reporting to. So it's really hard to hire a manager unless you're going to give that person some sort of heightened authority over transfers and dealings and all that sort of stuff. So my assumption is that the director of football would come first, but a simultaneous appointment would be a nice welcome event for me.
Yeah, I mean,
assuming they weren't idiots.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I seem to remember that, and I might be wrong. Someone in the chat, I'm sure, will correct me if I'm wrong. When Frank Arneson was appointed director of football, whatever he was, I'm sure him, Santini, and Joel were all announced at the same time, pretty much. I may be wrong, but that's what my memory seems to bring me towards. But yeah, it would be interesting if they did decide to do it simultaneously, wouldn't it? Okay, looking ahead then, 1 hour 10 in, 103 of you listening, please do like and subscribe. Looking ahead to the weekend, Brentford. Becky, you going to be there for the last home game of the season?
Yeah, and Leeds.
And Leeds, are you going to Leeds away as well, are you? Oh, you are a sucker for punishment. Well, I will. I'm going Saturday as well. I thought I'd best make an attempt to go to the last game of the season. So we should definitely have to meet up, Becky, for a drink if we get time before the game. South Stand or something. I'm going to get down there nice and early this week. But Jack, how do you see it going? Very briefly, we'll be talking about it in more detail on Friday's show.
Well, I mean, I think somebody said it earlier, it might have been James, is that, wouldn't mind to see something creative like to match Frank with a 3-5-2, 5-3-2 when you are defending, something because you're going to run in a situation where Skip and Hoiberg, if that's what you guys think is going to happen, it's going to be ugly. They play very direct football. They'll cut right through you. This is not a slow build up. This is not a bunch of triangles all over the pitch. You got two big, fast, strong strike partnership, up top with them, and you want to get them the ball in space as quickly as possible, right? So it's not a great matchup. It is at home. I worry about the atmosphere a little bit. I need to see. My son he's going to be leaving. He graduates this year, and he's going to be coming back to the States. This is going to be his last chance to get to a game for a very long time, and he is not interested in going at all. Maybe I can talk him into meeting up with you guys so he could go to the game. I'm sure plenty of tickets are available.
Mate, I would love to have him along.
I don't think necessarily the atmosphere is going to be that toxic, because I think a lot of people have just put their tickets on the exchange, and then families get them, and because of the women being afterwards, there's actually, I think there'll be a lot of families, a lot of kids there, and they don't tend to kind of boo and sing Levy out or that sort of stuff.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not so worried about the atmosphere for the same way, Becky. I think I'm more worried about the football we're going to see, to be honest, and whether we're going to get played off the park by Brentford. James, what's your hopes for Saturday 12:30 kickoff? We don't normally do well, do we? Early kickoffs on a Saturday.
No, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. My hopes for the kickoff and the game in general rest solely on a good friend I have called Jack. Right here to get me through the 90 minutes. Now that you've mentioned that, I might actually go to the game because it's Category C, so it isn't that expensive. I'm thinking about it just for a day out, because I'm going to London this weekend anyway. I'm working Friday, but I'm going to London anyway, so might do that. I'm hoping we see something, even if it's just Basuma coming in for Skip or Hoiberg, because we're not going to play an inverted left wing back and then cut inside and build up in a box and attack with a 5. Even if it's just putting Basuma in, maybe you see Kulu play it or something, something a little bit different, because I think Basuma would be a non-tactical change, but on a personnel level would be a huge improvement. I would love a 3-5-2, even if that midfield is Hoiberg, Skip and Basuma. I think it would be a lot better. Personally, I'd quite like to see maybe Skip, Basuma and Sarr, because Sarr and Basuma offer slightly different things, much more progressive on the ball, both good defensively. Skip then doesn't have to do anything ball progression wise. He can just mop up, even if it's Hoiberg. All you have to do, stand back, assist the back line, so Royal can push forward a bit more, into those half space in the attacking third, and just offer a little bit of solidity. If we do that, I'm very confident. But if we go with the same formation and the same players, same personnel we go with against Villa, I'm going to be going to the bar for another drink. That's what I'm going to be going for.
Yeah, well, I do sense that Brentford will be smelling blood, to use the shark analogy, to be honest, especially when they see what can happen if they get they can essentially overtake us if they get the 3 points, and whatever happens at Leeds will happen. Score predictions very quickly then. Becky, for you, where do you see it going?
1-1.
1-1. Okay, good. Jack?
2-2.
Oh, 2-2. And James?
I'm going to be optimistic. 4-3.
Wow. Okay. 4-3. I'm going to go for a draw, but we'll 2-2. 2-2. I think we can't see it's not conceding. Yeah, I think that's. I think, yeah, I think Jack's got the mummy on the head. All righty. Well, we go for an hour 15 on this Monday night. I think we will leave it there for the night. Becky, thanks ever so much for coming on to talk about your experiences at the game last week, and look forward to seeing you at the game on Saturday.
Yeah, thanks again for having me on. It's kind of like a repeated thing, isn't it? Pretty much now about what we sort of say on Mondays. It's just, and you get anything and everything at Spurs. But yeah, I'm looking forward to weekend really, going down Friday because of the early kickoff. So I'm staying over Saturday night as well. So yeah, looking forward to sort of seeing those that, like the ones I don't see at away games. Like you said, it's then even though the football has been fairly depressing this season, it's still 2-3 months before we see everyone again, and that's the sad bit really. So yeah, looking forward to seeing everybody and sort of hopefully seeing it without too poor a performance really.
Are you staying over? And does that mean that you're out, Becky?
I am out. Yes, only for the fourth time this season. So yeah, I am out.
Wow, excellent. Well, sounds good. Jack, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Even though the topic has not been all that fun, I still want to say that's a bottle job, maybe the best and brightest in the Premier League history.
Really is. I think they've done a fantastic job of bottling the Premier League. It's excellent.
I mean,
James,
really.
Sorry. Yeah, they're really good. James, where are you? Are you okay? Thanks for coming on. Get yourself to the club.
Love to be on. Oh, I'm not going to go yet. No one goes in like 20 minutes after they've opened. That's for the weirdos and losers now. I'm gonna finish my beer. I'm gonna nip to the pub, have a couple drinks, then go out. Thanks for having me on. Lovely to be on as ever. The offer of dipping your balls in Tabasco sauce still stands. I have some Tabasco sauce if you want it. It's very convenient. Like I said, very convenient. But
I mean, I'm sure Becky doesn't want to discuss this, but I do need to ask. How do you even know what happens? Have you ever done it? I mean, if you dip your finger in Tabasco sauce.
Okay. Have you ever?
Do you
really want to go there?
I have not performed that particular task, but I have, as a dare, performed that task with toothpaste, and that isn't pleasant. So I can imagine hot sauce is much less pleasant.
Yeah, it sounds weird. I mean, deep heat I could sort of get. I've had deep heat put in my shorts before at football, my undershorts at football, sprayed in by the lads, and then I've put them on, gone out.
I apologise for causing this conversation.
We've probably lost subscribers.
I'm deeply sorry. Everyone,
the unlikes are going so much higher right now on the.
It's an interesting one. But anyway, we'll leave it there because Becky's going to be sick, I think. So we'll leave it there.
Sorry, Becky. Sorry.
Sorry, John. I didn't have anything to do with this. I just want to make that clear.
Well, I mean, blame John's son.
Oh,
who's that?
I'm just looking at his comments.
Who's that little idiot?
But no, it's the most funniest bit of conversation we've had.
That's true.
Yeah.
So funny, he's left. Elvis has left the building, everyone.